a few issues. But my name is Renaud. I'm the one who put the agenda on the pre-start hooks. I wanted to talk about that one. So I think what I'm mostly interested in getting out of this meeting is to just close on the naming for the pre-start hooks. I think generally what we're looking for is what's the naming that we all agree on, and then move on. I think the general design on this issue is pretty much filled out. It's just we're trying to figure out if pre-start runtime, create, and mount is something that we would prefer compared to create runtime, create container, and then start container.
Well, I understood the recommendations to, change up pre-start, right? Because it wasn't as detailed enough. But why change? Why do we need to change the others? For some LXC flavor or something, or what?
So what we're doing specifically to give more context is that the current pre-start hook was currently ill-defined, or it was defined as part of the start operation in the OCI spec, but in runc, it was actually implemented as part of the create operation. So what we ended up doing is that we ended up making the ill-implemented runc pre-start hook part of the OCI spec as currently pre-start runtime. And as part of the discussion about adding this new hook pre-start runtime, we also noticed that we needed, it would be nice to also have this mount and start hook. Mount hook is basically pre-start container or create container. It is just a pre-start hook. It is a hook that is part of the create operation that happens before, at least in runc, pivot root is executed, and it happens inside the container namespace. And then start is a hook that happens as part of the start operation inside the container namespace. Does that give you some context, or do I need to go into a bit more detail?
No, it does.
So I think mainly what I'm hoping to get out of this is just a few more eyes on the name, and figure out if there's like a way to just make a decision on the name and move on with merging the PR so that runc 1 can be published.
I think changing the names to add, some semblance of context doesn't really help a lot, right? It's just, as I say, it's just a name. And modifying the names will affect, it's not just a name, it's a selector, right? So it'll change the behavior.
So we're not changing any behavior. We're deprecating the pre-start hook, and we are adding 3 new hooks. So it's just basically figuring out how these 3 new hooks are going to be named. That's pretty much it. And I think
just the new ones. I see what you're saying. Yeah, just the new ones.
Yeah, and I think like the big discussion is, do we want these new hooks to be named in the same way as LXC? The rationale behind that is, if I'm a plugin author, I'm building plugins for different runtimes, it would be nice to have hooks that do the same thing, having the same name. Or do we want these hooks to be named in a way that is more consistent across the spec? For example, it's very clear that create runtime, create container, and start container are hooks that are at least consistent between themselves, and they very clearly indicate what is happening. The create runtime is a hook that is part of the create operation that is in the runtime namespace.
Right. Yeah, I don't personally. I don't have much of a care on the actual name, whether it's as meaningful or not. Right. I think the important thing is that we have hooks, and when they're requested, like Eric Ernst said here, is it a point in time or an intention, right? They are a point in time for the execution cycle of the container, the life cycle, right? So I think that's the most important thing. Naming is sort of a nit thing, right?
Yes, I think I completely agree with you on that one. I think either way, I'm fine on whatever the name is. I just want to make sure that I don't end up changing them 3 times because 3 different people have three.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I was saying, oh man, please tell me you're not asking to change up the name of Post Stop or something, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I kind of like the one and where a little bit better than I'm ignorant on what LXC was, but I assume that they had something called Mount before. To me, saying that it's the create phase or the start phase, things like this makes it for me. I'm a simple person. It makes it a little more sense.
Yeah, look, just reading off their names, they had a pre-mount and a mount, and they were both running in the container namespace, as I think you said earlier. So.
Yep. So I mean, if everyone's fine with create runtime, create container, and start container, I'm happy to change that. Either way, I have a preference for the Galaxy ones, but my intention is to actually get this PR merged. If at the end of the day we have like a name that is different than the one I prefer, I don't really care.
Yeah, I think just for me, I'm confident that some people would like to do things more than just mount at that point in time. You could be doing other device stuff. So that's my only feedback, that maybe that one, again, I have a slight preference, but I'm just one person there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the guy who put the first set of names in isn't here to defend it. You probably want to just have a one-on-one with Murnau.
That's me.
If it's possible.
Oh, yeah. Murnau.
Renault. That's how you pronounce it.
No,
it's
sorry,
a French
not
name.
Murnau. Murnau.
Renault. Okay, sorry.
Murnau was involved in this as well.
Yeah, well, he should be, right?
I'll ping him in that case.
He did the PR for the names the first time. So yeah, I would definitely I'll post it here. Murnau P.
Do you have the link for the initial PR? I'm sorry, or maybe it's in the HackMD.
Not off the. I'd have to go look for it. It's probably moved around in repos a couple times.
Yeah. All right.
Renaud, and you kind of alluded to adding support for VM-based runtimes, hooks for those as well. So I guess in that sense, the when and where would be more applicable when you're like adding support for hooks for VM-based runtimes as well.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So you alluded to the fact that you wanted to add support for VM-based runtimes as well, as in running hooks for inside the guest.
So I think that was one of the discussion we had last time we talked about the hooks with Eric in this meeting, is when we were trying to figure out how to name the hooks. This came up as a question, which is actually the hooks are not very well defined as to, for a VM runtime, if they should be running on the hypervisor, in the guest, or in the container. And so I think that was one of the open question. The only feedback that I got was actually looks like from you today. So if we want to discuss that, if you want to specify that, that might be a good opportunity to do so.
Yeah, so in regards to that, I prefer the when and where. So if you're specifying like create runtime or create container, that makes it more explicit. So if you want to add hooks for, let's say, adding hooks for guest, then we may add something like create guest or create guest runtime.
So if you want to add more hooks, I think I have no concerns on that one. Um, I'm wondering, I think that's something that might be good to have feedback from different people. If create guest, sorry, so your suggestion was to have create guest or create guest runtime?
Um, I haven't thought about that too much in detail, but I mean, if you want to be more explicit, say inside the guest as well, where we want to run the hooks, then my suggestion would be like create guest runtime and create guest container.
So I'm wondering how it would work out in the spec, because for run C, create guests, what would that map to? Is that something that we should add as part of the definition of the create runtime and create container, that it should be in the guest VM?
I'm not sure about the run C case. So in case, I guess, in case of run C, I mean, they could just ignore the hooks which are like guest related.
Does it make sense to split this whole VM as part of a new PR?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with addressing that in a separate PR, but considering that we do want to add it in the future, it will be better that if we like start with naming the hooks, keeping that in mind. So like keeping the context in mind, as in where and when, rather than having your initial proposal of pre-start and mount. So that was my only suggestion for it.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I think that's definitely something we can continue on the, at least to discuss on the PR. And once we have something more concrete, thought through some of the things like we mentioned, should Renzi be ignoring these folks or not? That's definitely something we can probably split in a new PR, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hooks.
Well, I'll change the hooks name to create runtime create container, and then I think at this point I'm hoping that we'll have consensus and move on. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, Ronald, just to give you, I did look for it. The code lives in live container configs, config.go for the names in run C, right? And then the spec picked up from those names as they were currently, coded.
Okay. Do you mind linking to them in the notes?
I can give you at least like one link that'll help you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Renaud, just as a side comment, I just want to say thanks for this. I've been kind of lurking. I know that I gave you feedback like months ago on it, but looking at that PR, naming is hard, and this has been going on forever. And I'm sorry to come in, and
that's okay. I'm used to things that take 6 months. Kubernetes is also very much like this.
Yeah. Cool.
It's hard, but you won't get a whole lot of back pressure from it. Just get a couple of guys on the run C side and or the spec side to agree with the proposal, and it'll go through pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not too concerned. I think I'm happy to see that it's finally moving, but I'm used to it.
All right, thanks, man. Oh, Steve, I think you own the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I see John's here and Josh. I'm not sure who else has been digging in deep to the media type conversation. The thing I'm just trying to understand, like I haven't read the RFC spec yet. I've been busy with this other project. But the thing that I'm just trying to digest is how we're doing a difference between the manifest config media type and the layer media type. So I don't know if John, you can chime in with some thoughts on what you guys think. And I'm actually not sure who on the phone is, because I think I saw in the attendees that there was several folks from AWS.
Yeah, we're on the phone.
Okay. Hey, guys. So what does anybody have background on how the media types were set the way they were? Because I just got confused because last week I thought we left that there's a dot naming convention and then it ends with the persistence format. And then if the persistence format, meaning the file type, JSON, config, tar, whatever, is also compressed or also encrypted, that they would be pluses. I'm kind of focusing on the word also. But it turns out that the existing OCI manifest media type has a plus JSON. So where the layer is a dot tar.
I think I can explain some of the confusion. I don't have historical context, but I talked to Derek about this, and what he said makes sense to me.
It's hard to hear you, John. Hold on a second. Maybe it's my speaker.
It might be me. I believe either way.
It's you for sure.
Okay.
I like Eric's clarity there. Oh, okay. So John's saying he's going to reconnect. I'll give him a minute.
Hello?
Better.
Cool. So one thing that I think is causing some confusion is that final part after the last dot isn't meaningful outside of the rest. So that entire string is what you care about. The dot tar at the end doesn't mean anything. The reason there's not a dot JSON at the end there is because of two things. To contrast it with the file system diff stuff, that whole like file system diff, whatever vendor, OCI, whatever, dot tar is one thing, and that thing represents a diff of a file system as a tarball, and so that's one unit. Similarly, there's the like VND, OCI, whatever config. That thing represents a structure, and plus JSON indicates that it happens to be encoded as JSON. You could imagine that there's a plus YAML version of that, and a client should be able to see that YAML and interpret it in the same way as the JSON that is the canonical thing that most people use.
So it happens to be what? Sorry, I'm trying to take notes. I think typing shut down my ears.
Sure. So so the config media type,
which uses a plus JSON.
It just so happens to be JSON in everything in the world. Everybody uses JSON for that. But what it's encoding is actually just a structure that could be YAML as well, right? So like in the same way kube control understands both YAML and JSON, a client should be able to understand that if there's a plus YAML at the end of that, it could interpret it in the same way as if it were encoded as JSON.
So it would be config plus YAML versus config plus JSON.
It would be a new media MIME type.
Right, but we're already doing that anyway, right? Because we're saying that the config object. So this is interesting. So we're basically saying that the config object, the media type, the string, is required because that's how we're pivoting that this is an OCI image versus a Helm chart versus Singularity or something else.
Correct.
For those that want to put content in the config object, which OCI image does, then they have a choice of whether it could be JSON, YAML, or yet something else. And by encoding the config, because we're basically saying plus is an encoding, then we're encoding in JSON or encoding in YAML or encoding in tar. Right? Tar wouldn't actually be a good example here. But the whole thing is still just a string, and that's the format.
Right. So if you're using a string as a primary key for like mapping into some behavior, what you should actually be looking at is application/vnd.oci.image.config.v1. Not the plus JSON part. The plus JSON part just tells you like, okay, I need to use a JSON parser to understand what this thing is.
Okay, can we think, so it's one way to say that, and again, this will be up to the artifact tooling around that artifact to process that. Can we think of a scenario where a particular artifact, two different instances of an artifact could be done, one in YAML and one in JSON? Or would an artifact just say, I always use YAML or I always use JSON? Or it could be pivoted on the version, honestly.
So the answer to that depends on if you're asking about how the world works or how the world could work if things were better.
Just sounds so open-ended. There's just so many ways to interpret that.
Okay, so like in my interpretation of the media type RFC is that if I were writing a conforming client that would broadly support everything I expect to see, if somebody handed me a Docker image that instead of having a JSON config file had a YAML config file, I would know what to do. And so like you could produce YAML versions of all the Docker images, right? But it just so happens that everything is JSON and everyone's using JSON for everything, so no clients expect to see YAML. But from the media type RFC, if we fix our clients to like actually treat these as media types instead of just strings that are hard-coded everywhere, then I'd parse the media type. I'd see like, okay, the subtype is this config.v1 thing from OCI, and one of the suffixes is JSON. Okay, I'm going to use the JSON parser. But that's not how anything works yet. I'd like it to.
Okay, so this is where the world will be a better place if everybody can support every encoding format.
Right, and this is where like I'm frustrated that the Z standard thing was merged, because like we aren't treating these as if they were actually media types. And if we were, then I could write clients assuming that they're actual media types, and then I wouldn't be afraid of the future because there's some structure in the world.
Okay, so in the scope of our planet is one of many planets in the solar system, to put some scoping to it, I don't know where I'm going to go with this, is it a bad thing to say that a particular artifact decides, no, I'm not going to worry about encoding. It's a config object. There's so many different things to worry about. Do I really need to worry about encoding a config object in 16 different ways? Because it's not like I'm trying to make end users get some flexibility. It's really all the tools. Right. And if you make it so complex that every tool needs to support every potential encoding type, doesn't that stymie the ecosystem for that particular artifact type? Exactly. But on the, sorry, Mike, but on the other side is, I was writing it that it had to be JSON because I don't even know if I put a lot of thought to it because I didn't see a reason to have to do it others, but I think it was, somebody was asking about a different format. If we say that, hey, if artifact foo wants to use YAML, or what's the latest thing, Josh, that Helm is using in Helm 3?
No, we won't talk about that.
We're not going to talk about TOML or anything else.
Okay, the format we don't want to talk about, but let's say that they did want to support the thing that nobody wants to talk about it. They could choose that for Helm, and it just means that the Helm community has to use that format when parsing the config object, and registry operators would as well. But at least that Helm artifact type in its spec said what it is. Does that?
So I think so what John is saying I think makes a lot of sense. It's confusing to think about from the perspective of, I think, something like Helm, because Helm client is always pushing the JSON. But from your end, Steve, like the registry should probably have just two different layers of validation. So just splitting on the plus. So the left side, you could say everything up to that V1 is Helm. And then on the right side, you say, okay, we only support JSON right now. But just, I think ahead of time, thinking about that as breaking it down into two different levels of support. Am I like understanding that right, John?
Yeah, I think we need to add some structure to these media types in all the clients, just so that like we're not stuck with JSON forever. Because right now, if the artifact stuff blows up, we're going to have this explosion of clients that instead of treating these as media types, they're treating them as strings, and they don't know
Yep.
about suffixes, and then we're stuck using JSON for the rest of time.
Well, what I'm trying to suggest is, so here's what I'm worried about. I think this is what Mike was acting on also, is if we treat the right side right as being whatever encoding somebody wants, if tool 2 that wants to create container images, OCI container images, then, and they decide to start stuffing YAML in the registry, does that mean that all the registries and all the other tools all of a sudden need to start supporting YAML? And did they go out on an edge that now we're all chasing that? Or if we said differently, that when, let's just say that OCI container image is a JSON. And let's just take Helm, and because Helm kind of does YAML, it's certainly for the Helm charts. So let's just say, and Josh, I know it's not, but I'm using it because I need some other difference. So let's just say that Helm decides to encode their config object as a YAML object. As long as, go ahead, Josh.
No, I'm just having problems with my mute button. Go ahead.
Okay. I thought you were going to object to using YAML there. I was like, just let me.
No.
Yeah,
Go on.
So as long as the Helm spec for its artifact says we use YAML, and we say in the artifact spec that that is perfectly valid, then it means that Helm can do that. And if Singularity wants to use yet another encoding format, they can do that. But I don't have to have all the tools that have to work with all of these, understand all encoding formats. Because I think what you're kind of getting at is there's some generic, I'll call it registry tooling, and it might be artifact tooling, either way, that I want to iterate through the things in a registry regardless of the type, because I'm trying to index them. I'm trying to show icons next in a display. I'm trying to scan them, and I want to at least know them. So if I am a registry scanner and I can scan images, and eventually I want to be able to store Helm charts, I'm going to know what it means to parse a Helm chart and look at all the files and figure out what makes security. And I want to look at CIF for Singularity and OPA and all these things. If I have to multiply every one of those to then also consider parsing the schemas for each one, and of course, by the way, does that mean I have to perform a YAML schema validation as well as a JSON schema validation for every artifact type? Or can we just say, and I'll shut up, can we just say every artifact type decides their encoding? And for that version, they can say V2, encoding 2. Or let's say V1 is JSON and or let's say Helm does V1 is YAML, and they come to their senses and do V2 and they go back to JSON. Is that a bad thing?
I think that's just how the world works right now, right? So like Docker uses JSON for everything, and I think that's going to be the pattern you see because that's the easiest thing to do. I'm not suggesting we do anything in the short term about this, but just semantically, I think it's important to acknowledge that this string has structure inside of it so that we don't close the door on, say, registry operators supporting YAML or clients being able to push YAML. It's just like right now, it's currently impossible to do, but I think we need to update the image spec to say like what these strings are, and I think those strings are those media types, and I think we can register some media types. But yeah, to your point, I think it's fine that like a client and a artifact type, we use YAML because that's what the community is used to. But right now it's impossible. Everyone has to use JSON because registries didn't look at those media types and say, oh yeah, there's this RFC about media types. Let me go read it and say, oh, this JSON suffix means that it's only JSON incidentally, and I could parse this anyway. There's no registry in the world. Well, there's probably not any registry that will accept a YAML config file, right? But there should be. Like this should be possible.
And that's the only thing I'm questioning is, do we think we need to support a specific artifact to be able to arbitrarily decide a particular client to be able to push a particular artifact, like in the OCI image? Let's say an OCI image can be pushed, and this tool 2 says, I decided I like YAML. I'm going to push it to YAML because it's an RFC media type. All registries should support YAML, and if they don't, they fail because it's an extra. As opposed to OCI image says it's JSON. Helm says they want to use YAML. And we say that is perfectly valid because all tools that work with Helm know to use YAML because that's what they declared in their spec. As a registry operator, many of these config objects, the media type we're always going to use, the config object is an optional thing to provide, and it's an optional thing to parse. I don't need to look into a config object to show a Helm chart. I just know it's a Helm chart. I'll show the Helm icon, and that assumes that they're even using config objects. I don't believe they are yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The big difference here is like how clients behave and how registries should behave. And right now, registries preclude certain client behaviors, and I don't think they should because the protocol should allow for you to push like an arbitrary config type. Well, you know, I guess maybe some registries are a little more promiscuous than others, but like, I don't know. It just like clients should be able to use YAML if they want, and registries should allow it. And I know a bunch don't, and that's my problem. I think you're right that like, yeah, a home client probably is going to use the same config type, and it shouldn't. Sorry.
All I'm trying to push on and poke at is, I'm challenging you to, does somebody, if OCI image says it uses JSON, should we, as the people meeting on these calls every week, change it to say somebody else can push an OCI image, but they actually decide to use YAML and we should deal with it? Or another artifact type should be able to use a different format, and as long as they declare in the spec, that's perfectly fine.
Well, Steve, I think right now, as it stands, right, we only have the one artifact type, and it is JSON. Tyranny of the internet, right? That's just the way it is. The reason is Golang supports JSON fairly well, right? YAML came along a little bit after. Perhaps it would have been YAML from the beginning, but it wasn't, right? XML and schema support in Golang. I guess we're being recorded, but it's horrible, right? So it's just not the right way to do things in Golang at the time, right? So I think at one point in time we can see a 1.1 spec where YAML is approved, as an alternate MIME, and then you could say the type is what comes before the plus YAML or plus JSON, right? I think that's very viable, but at the same time, I don't think you want to just let willy-nilly let any parser go if it looks like it's going to break most of the tools written in Golang may not support it. For example, XML, right? We should listen to what the arguments are and go from there, right? And probably start improving the image spec in 1.1 to add more types. I'm sorry, more encoding types.
So why don't I do this? Let me propose this. The thing that makes a unique media type for an artifact is up to the plus sign.
Right.
So it'll be v1, blah 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 dot v1, right?
Right.
encf dot config dot v1, and then the plus is basically the end for uniqueness. And then the other clarification that I think I want to add is an artifact spec can declare what encoding formats they require tools to support.
Right. And it should be at least one, right?
It should, well, if they actually have a config object, it has to be at least one. What's interesting about that is this actually makes it really interesting. So if Josh, can you confirm Helm doesn't use config, right? The config object.
It's not used by the client. What do you mean by that?
Do you push a null for the config object in?
No, so the funny thing is actually the chart.yaml file.
Oh, really?
JSONified, yeah. So that actually, yeah, it's actually an example of what could be YAML, but we're not.
Okay. Would you like it to be YAML?
I have no desire for it to be YAML. There's also no usage of it at the moment. It's just for the case that we want to future-proof if registries want to start scanning the metadata. on a chart, they don't need to load the whole tarball.
Awesome. Okay, so actually my use case, that example wasn't so goofy. So here's what I'll make up another one, Marky Mark, which is also yours. I'm just going to
Okay.
There's no config value in the Marky Mark document. So for artifact,
You're correct, yeah.
okay, so for artifact types that actually don't need a config object, they just use the config mime type to just say it is a Marky Mark. Instead of having to put plus JSON, which is what it currently says, or it might have been .json, whatever I screwed up, but now I'll change it to plus JSON.
Yeah, plus, yeah.
So now we're saying is it would actually it wouldn't have a plus anything because it's null. So basically if it's null, there is no plus anything because there is no encoding. It's just being used as the unique media type that says,
right,
this is a Marky Mark artifact.
Just a blob, right?
Right. Well, it's not even what do you mean by a blob?
Well, it's not something the tool's going to parse. So the tool doesn't need to know what the format is.
Correct. But when you say blob, it sounds like there's something in it. Like, and it's actually null.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The only thing I think is if, are they going to want to stuff something there at one point? But I guess it doesn't matter if you're using the plus as your whatever's left of the plus as the uniqueness anyway. So.
Well, I would suggest if they start to put something, they should rev the version.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. So I think as part of artifacts, you just say these are the required. This is the unique type, and these are the required supported encodings. That makes sense to me.
Okay. So if it's a null object, there's nothing to the right of the version, and
right.
if it is an object, then you have to tell us if it's JSON, YAML, or whatever, TOML, or I don't know, whatever. I actually forgot what the other thing you guys are all supporting in Helm, but anyway, Lua, that was it. It was Lua, which is so
yeah,
we won't talk about that. I think the police are coming after me. That's what I'm hearing.
That's me. I'm sorry. I'm muting again. Go ahead.
Okay. So then all right, there you go. So my only question then, because this all makes sense. What I don't understand is, I know, John, you started to say this, but why is layer dot? Was there something to do with it's a diff, or is that it's part of the unique media type?
The dot tar thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't you're really like tunnel visioning on that last dot. Just think about the whole string. That's a unique thing, and that unique thing is this file system diff. And the reason, so that could be just application/tar, but it's not, because it contains whiteout files that are semantically different from a normal tarball. And the reason it's not plus tar is that it's not, you can't just untar this thing and understand it.
Oh, so the dot tar is actually happens to be 3 letters that will align with the tar format because it's pseudo tar. But you're basically saying this is a special OCI layer diffgram that uses tar, but the encoding isn't completely tar.
Yeah, the only reason, so client shouldn't think of this as a tar file. It has .tar because truly it does use tar as how it's bundled up, but you can't interpret it as a tar file. You need to interpret this as
you can't interpret it that way.
Yeah, you have to interpret this thing as an application/vnd.oci.image.layer.v1.tar, which is a unique thing completely from application/tar. And .tar at the end means nothing.
Okay, and then if it happens to be encoded with compression, that's
right.
why it's gzip or the other ones that are on there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
You should really read this RFC because we're basically just kind of teasing apart what the RFC says using like 100 different examples. And when you describe how you should do this stuff with artifacts, I think you should reference the RFC and like the language it describes, because otherwise we're going to have 2 competing definitions of how you should think about things.
That's fair. And I apologize. I don't need to make everybody help me read the spec that I haven't had time to read. But the context really helps, and I will make sure that I will try, and you guys will make sure before it gets approved that I've done the right factoring of what's described in the artifact spec versus pointing to the RFC. But at least I now understand it better, and as I read the RFC, I'll have a better context for it. So thank you. Okay. We have a little extra time. I'll go back to the hack doc and make a couple of notes of what I believe I heard, and you guys will correct me if I didn't do it right.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So phone number AWS folks, does that help you? Any questions? Who's actually there? It should be less weird.
This is Matthew. No questions from us. That sounded good. We didn't have, yeah, we're glad that if we are having these things that look like media types, actually be full-blown media types as the spec says.
That'll make a lot of sense. I definitely didn't want to reinvent things, which is why I was trying to just copy what was already there so to have more explanation of it. It's great. And actually, this has been one of the things that came up the most with various questions is understanding all these media types. And Josh and I were just talking about cutting a new version of ORAS. And one of the things that we did was we made some changes to what the defaults were, because the defaults were set to OCI image, which means that if everybody's experimenting, just pushing markdown files or text files or Helm charts or whatever into a registry with ORAS, they were all looking like OCI container images. And obviously that's not what they're meant to be. So I will go back and change what a unknown is, and I'll fix the layer types to be use one of the existing ones like application/tar or application./JSON or whatever those are, and I'll go back and make sure I reference that. So that should clean up things. Since we do have a couple of minutes and we have the 3 major registries on the call, one of the other things that's been coming up is how do I know what artifact types a registry supports? So how do I know what I can push? And how do I know well, not necessarily what I pull, it's really what can I push? And I've been kind of pushing this out a little bit because I wanted to get the basics working. My pitch was this was where we as registry operators get to decide what level of support we want to give. We can leave it completely open. Like right now, ACR is completely open for validation because we wanted to kind of prime the ecosystem so you don't have to just stand up Docker distribution yourself. We wanted to give it. That does mean we've got a little of a junk drawer starting to happen. And I'm curious what others think. Do you guys want to have things closed by default and you would have to import the artifact type JSON files for the well-known? Do you think, and I'm not trying to get into how you guys want to uniquely run your business by any means. I'm just trying to get a sense of how do we want the spec to reflect this, and what ownership should I feel like I need to put into the spec so the registry operators must. Like registry operator, to support artifacts, registry operators must relax their validation on media types. Relax is loose because it could be, you can leave it completely open if you want, like we happen to be doing with ACR now, or you could say, we will accept a set of media types. Here's what we currently support. If you want us to support more, open up an issue here, and we'll evaluate and decide to add. How do you guys want to do this? Or what's your thoughts? You folks, I won't say guys, I apologize.
This is Matthew from AWS again. Currently we have a whitelist of accepted media types, and like we, in the short term, definitely aren't going to open it up wholesale. But we definitely think that there should be some type of standardized functionality for a client to know what media types a registry supports, just so it doesn't get some cryptic client error message of like malformed input when it is completely valid input. We just don't support it. So yeah, like something so that if someone is pushing to ACR and is completely valid, if they want to go and push to ECR, the client can give a nice message saying like, this unique media type isn't supported, you know, point them to a place where they can request it to be supported or something like that.
Right. it's almost like you're almost suggesting there's a redirect in there that says if it's not supported, there's a redirect that or something. But it's interesting you said the client would know it. So like the Helm client could maybe first do a push, and if it errors, then it says, hey, hey, distribution spec implementation, I'm calling this API, do you support this media type? And it says yes or no with an error message that might say, go to here to request support.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. You push your config, and if it's wrong, it's got the wrong media type in it, you'll get an error. And the error types are known. Like blob unknown, for example.
Right. John, were you starting to say something?
I wasn't, but I could say something if you'd like me to.
Please. I saw your mic on mute when we were talking.
I mean, I don't have a really strong opinion on it. I think we'll probably just, in the interest of lower maintenance, relax stuff such that you can push whatever you want. I think that's going to make it easiest to evolve and build on top of this stuff. It's frustrating when like there's no reason why registry wouldn't accept something except for the fact that it's so wrong, like JSON encoding. I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much, but I'm leaning towards just opening the floodgates and letting people shoot their own feet if they'd like.
It's almost, I'm on the fence on this, but I'll use the other arguments. Like, why is it if I try to save something to my local disk on my computer that .zip is not supported? So like, oh shit, that's stupid. Okay, well, I'll just change it to .tar and all of a sudden it works. But it's still a zip. I just had to fake it out.
Hey, don't be giving out the hints there, Steve.
It's like the email attachments. You can't send a .c# file or a whatever. But if I just change the extension, I didn't actually change the content. I just changed the extension. The security scanners don't pick it up in the email extension. So
yeah, you can do whatever you want in the config. You can lie as much as you want. And we don't go into the binary part. But the config does have to be parsable and does have to have correct type, or at least a type that's in the current set. We could release that right in a registry, but that's a registry decision.
Right. And I have been nervous about leaving ours open as well. It's just if I don't leave it open, then it stymies any innovation that's people want to play with. So I've been on the fence about it. So my thought is this. So again, please chime in. My thought is the spec will say to be a registry operator that supports artifacts, there's no must support all media types. It'll be you must be able to support additional media types, and you may choose which ones you support. So I really hate the must as much as possible. So I'll pick on AWS just for a second here. Is like they might decide to keep them locked down like Quay is. I know that not Jimmy. I just drew a blank. What's his name at Quay? I just drew a blank. I apologize. Guy from New York.
Joey something?
Not Jimmy, the other guy.
Like Joey Shore or something like that?
Joey, yes. So Joey was very passionate about having structure, and I like that. I'm a DBA, historically, so I like structured things. So he was very passionate about wanted. So I'll pick on him because he's not here. He decides that Quay, you have to, get it approved. So he can be artifact spec compliant, and choose to do that. Where I was going with this, so the spec will say you must support new types, but which ones you support is up to you to support them. Where I was kind of going is, does somebody, if we think we do need this discovery API, because there is a potential to lock them down, then Matthew or one of you folks there, do you want to propose what that API looks like? Or does volunteering you for that work mean that you'll just leave it open anyway?
Hard to say right now. I'm definitely fine with putting a little bit more work and more thought into it. I don't it definitely shouldn't hold up the 1.0 of the spec, I think, because this is more related to the distribution spec rather than the artifact spec. But yeah, I can definitely put in some more thought into what that would actually look like.
Okay. And clearly I am soliciting more help. I know it probably helps me to get the baseline in so we know what to iterate on, but I definitely would love to get more contributors and reviewers and even maintainers to take on other parts of it. In the latest PR for the spec, I did put a diagram in there. It shows the refactoring, and that is an open item that Mike put in to actually pull the manifest schemas out of our image spec so that we can reference those independently. So anyway, I just noticed the time. So I think we've got some really good closure on some things, certainly on the media types, which was the big blocking thing for people. Now I think we can go back and tell Helm and Singularity what exactly they should finitely put in, so that if we decide to limit media types, or we certainly want to show a nice icon in our various portals to say, hey, here's a Singularity image, here's a Helm chart, that we can actually say the word Helm and use the Helm logo, as opposed to saying, here's this long media type that, of course, has nothing to do with what humans want to read. So having closure on that is great. And it sounds like for now we might consider being open, or the AWS folks will consider what that proposal of an API that says discovery looks like. I'm still going to move forward with the well-known types, because that's how we can import things and know this is a Helm chart in various languages and here's the Helm logo. It's just a matter of whether you have to import those just to take on any media type to let the ecosystem kind of evolve. So, cool. Anything else? All right. With that, oh, Mike, oh, no, you did record. Cool. I yield back and we'll wrap up. I think we'll still be on for next week if possible. I'm probably gonna get slammed getting prepped for KubeCon like everybody else. But are folks on the call gonna be at KubeCon?
I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
AWS, Matthew and folks?
So the three of us that are on the call won't be here or won't be there, but there will be a few of us there, and I think there's actually going to be a meeting on signing stuff.
Oh, awesome. Awesome, that's great. All right, I'm actually, we'll chat offline. I actually have to travel to Orlando and back at the beginning of the week, but if we can do something on Wednesday, that would be awesome. So I'll see if I can get some conversations going, see if we can get together. Thank you, folks.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks.